You're live.
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Okay.
Here to talk about a really light, happy film.
So, um, so the theme for today's live was Redemption Best Actor. And the options were Bill Murray in Lost in Translation, Denzel Washington in Malcolm X, Morgan Freeman in The Shawshank Redemption, Al Pacino in The Godfather 2, and Edward Norton in American History X. And it was a pretty close race up until the end between Ed and Denzel. But Edward won.
I was surprised at that. I voted for Malcolm X.
I was 100% sure Al Pacino would have won, and I would have voted for Al Pacino because I haven't seen The Godfather 2, and we reviewed The Godfather.
Excellent film. But
I was curious to know how he ended up.
Oh, well, there's a Godfather 3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because Pacino for Godfather 2 lost to Art Carney for Harry and Tonto, which was considered an upset, and then wouldn't win. Al Pacino's only won one Oscar, and it wouldn't be till 1992 Scent of a Woman, which is a remake of an Italian film. And that he won over Denzel Washington for Malcolm X that year.
Oh. Well, the only one I hadn't seen American History X, and obviously The Godfather 2. I knew American History X was about, well, actually, I didn't know what. I remember thinking it was about like violence in prison, I think is what I thought it was about. But it is a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So the premise of this movie, living a life marked by violence, neo-Nazi Derek finally goes to prison after killing 2 Black youths. Upon his release, Derek vows to change. He hopes to prevent his brother, Danny, who idolizes Derek, from following in his footsteps. So that's basically the movie. But the narrative is very interesting because the story takes place like in less than 24 hours, but then we get told a lot of stuff via flashback.
Mm-hmm.
So the story is that Danny, played by Edward Furlong, he's a high school student, and we see that he is in trouble by his teacher because he was supposed to write a paper on like a civil rights activist, and he chose Hitler.
And that's Elliot Gould, who's Jewish.
Who we'll talk about. So the principal, who's played by
Avery Brooks,
he says, listen, I'm not sending you back to that class because you've upset this teacher. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to have a personal one-on-one class. We're going to call it American History X. And your first assignment due tomorrow is you're going to write a paper about your brother, Derek. So the principal has a history with Derek. And we find out that, and it's told all out of sequence, but we find out that one day the family is having, like, it almost looks like Thanksgiving dinner or lunch. It's Derek, Danny. So Derek is Danny's brother, their sister,
Davina,
the mom played by Beverly D'Angelo, Derek's girlfriend played by Fairuza Balk, and the mom, Beverly D'Angelo, is dating Elliot Gould, who's the teacher, who's Jewish, which is important. And they're having a discussion at the table, and things quickly escalate to like race politics, and Davina and Derek get into like a physical altercation when she tries to get up and leave the table. So there's a fight ensues. Derek starts really letting it be known that he is, he's a white supremacist, but like his words are clearly describing him as such. And Elliot Gould is like, well, my name's Bennett, I'm not in it. So he walks out. And of course, Beverly D'Angelo is upset. So she tells Derek, I want you out of my house. And he says, fine, I'll be out in the morning. But that night, like 3 Black men are attempting to steal the car that their father owned. And we know that their father died, which we need to get to as well. So Danny tells his brother Derek, like, there's a black guy trying to steal the truck. And Derek goes out there with a gun in his underwear, shoots 2 of them, The driver gets away. One of them dies from the gunshot wound. The other one isn't quite dead. So in a very shocking moment, Derek, what the kids call curb checking, I guess, kills this man by smashing his head into the curb. Gets arrested, gets a 3-year prison sentence. And it's during his time in prison he befriends Guy Torrey.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get into it, but his relationship with Guy Torrey and how the jailhouse politics work, he ends up leaving the prison feeling very differently than he did when he went in. It's also important to know that, and we can talk about it more, but Derek had a relationship with that principal that was favorable. Like, he really admired him. He was very, the principal has 2 PhDs, very smart, caring. So when Derek gets out, he's very disappointed to find out his brother has followed in his footsteps, because Derek didn't want anyone visiting him in prison. So he didn't see the progress. So there's a big party for Derek upon his release by the leader of their white supremacist group, which is called DOC,
Mm-hmm.
Disciples of Christ, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the leader of that is Stacy Keach.
Yes.
And Derek confronts him I'm done with this shit, and you need to leave my brother alone. He inadvertently he assaults Stacy Keach's character and tries to leave the party, and he almost gets hemmed up, but he does leave, and his brother follows him. He convinces his brother that this way of life is not the best way. There's a moment where they go back to their bedroom and take down all their racist ass paraphernalia.
And he just puts it in the closet.
We need to talk about all of that.
Burn that shit.
Yeah, but then the next morning, Derek gets all gussied up because he has to see his parole officer and take Danny to school. And when he goes to meet the officer, well, we can get into it. But when Danny gets to school, he had an altercation with a couple of other students who were Black. And it seems like they have a history with these students. Danny does. So the final scene of the film is Danny's at school in the bathroom, and one of the Black kids, shoots and kills him. The end. With
his essay, a very integral essay.
And that's the day he was supposed to turn in his. So it's not even 24 hours that have passed.
Watching it now, the use of this essay kind of reminded me a little bit of The Whale.
Yeah.
Although this essay was a lot more meaningful, I think, than what The Whale does.
I'm just going to read my pull quote. Equal parts disturbing and honest, American History X is a sobering look at the power of role models. Did you make one?
I didn't. But that, to me, that is the crux of this film. It's all about mentorship and role models and how they are crafting people in a transitional phase in their life.
Yeah. I think the story is very powerful and very well done. I think the performances from particularly Edward Norton and Eddie Furlong.
I think Fairuza Balk is great. I think Beverly D'Angelo is really good.
Yeah.
And I thought she looks amazing, especially in those black and white sequences. But you know who Edward Norton lost to?
Oh, no, I didn't even think about that. Who did he lose to?
Roberto Benigni for Life is Beautiful.
Am I familiar with that movie?
I don't like Life is Beautiful. It's about it's set in the concentration camps, but about a father and his child, and this father getting everyone else that's stuck in this concentration camp, so all these Jews, to pretend that what's happening isn't really happening for the child.
Oh, interesting.
It is. It sounds more interesting, I think, than it is. But
it's also important to note that in the flashback scenes where Derek is still like a white supremacist, the film is shot in black and white. And when he gets out of prison and his mindset's different, the film's in color. What didn't I like about the movie? Some of the performances are a little crunchy to me, but I think it's because of the dialogue. So I think the script is a little crunchy. It felt like an after-school special at times.
It cuts corners, especially I think with Derek, his indoctrination, his radicalization, I think feels a little it seems a little rushed, but even more so how he comes out of it.
Well, when I was done with the movie, I thought, oh, if only it was that easy to cure racism. I mean, it just happens like so easily. Well, they're indoctrinated, both of them, it seems so easily. And then their minds are changed. What I would have liked more of is the time Derek spent in prison. Because what I didn't, we can talk more about it, but like Guy Tori, his relationship, I would have liked more of that because
more Guy Tori, who I thought was really cute in this.
I thought he was super cute, and I think it sort of diminishes because it kind of almost make him like a court jester in a way. Like his humor is what won,
which would win him over. But I think is also, humor is something that's specific to humanity, right? And allowing somebody's making you laugh, you're seeing them as a human.
Yeah, it's a gateway to a connection. And of course, when Derek leaves prison on his final day, he bumps into Guy Tori's character. And that's when let's just talk about. So in prison, Derek joins the white supremacist group. And then as we're made to understand, like these gangs provide each other protection, right? But then as Derek becomes closer to Guy Tori's character, and he's also frustrated with the gang he's a part of because they're doing dealings with like the Latino gang. He doesn't like how they're running their operation. And he's also softening to this black man. One day he decides to go play basketball with the black guys. So now Derek is mingling with the black guys. And his gang doesn't like that. So there's a pretty graphic like sexual assault scene in the prison shower where Derek is assaulted by his gang. And then to make matters worse, the next day or whatever, or later that day, after he gets out of the hospital, he doesn't have lunch with them. So now he's fully like out of the gang and he has no protection. And we're told he has like 4 months left in prison. So we get narration from Derek saying like, I know they're going to kill me. Like these black guys are going to kill me because no one's protecting me. But he never gets assaulted. So during this montage, we see him growing out his hair. The principal came to visit him and brought him books. So we see Derek reading the books the principal brought him. So on the last day of prison, he tells Guy, and Guy acknowledges like, yeah, I pretty much stuck my neck out for you so these black guys wouldn't harm you. And I think that's supposed to be sort of the final thing that changes Derek's mind. I think there's more, I know there's more complexity to this topic than what we see. And so I felt like that needed more work because it's giving me Master Gardener, like how
Joel
Edgerton's character. And like if racism were that easy to fix, I don't know why we have the problems we have today.
No, but there's something very simple that can start you on the path towards that.
No, but it's a powerful, like the story I think is very inspirational.
Mm-hmm. I think a couple things. The prison sentence that Guy Tori has versus Edward Norton is a good talking point. Before we get to the principal, maybe.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, just that we learned that Guy Tori Lamont was stealing a TV, like Jerry Blank.
Oh,
and he dropped it on the foot of a police officer that he ran into and was charged with assaulting an officer.
There were a lot of things in this movie that bothered me, but the thing that bothered me the most is that like Edward Norton's character only gets 3 years for doing these heinous things. And then Guy Tori gets 6 years for dropping a TV on a cop's foot, which was considered assault. And we also learned that part of why Derek didn't get more time is because his brother wouldn't testify against him to say what really happened.
Right.
So, that makes sense to me, but it was just so frustrating, like that these two people are so different in how dangerous they are to society, and yet the one gets more time.
Right. Well, it makes sense because the system is rigged, but it also that reminded me of White Boy Rick, right? Which is watching White Boy Rick is like, okay, so the only thing really notable about this story is that this white guy got a black man's prison sentence, and that's what's shocking to people. So I think Avery Brooks as the principal has great screen presence, but I think that the film has the hardest time kind of navigating with him. There's an interesting moment where Stacy Keach calls the principal and Uncle Tom, which is kind of, I don't know if the film consciously was making that an in-joke because Avery Brooks played Uncle Tom in a TV version of Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is, it adds interesting layers to this.
Okay, I need to go through my notes. Okay, so Derek's tattoo on his chest, the swastika, that looked like someone took painter's tape and made a tattoo out of it. It did not look good to me. Like, not the actual symbol, but like the tattoo work. It just looked like, it looked fake. Just to put that out there.
Because the symbol's fake too, but you know.
The principal's putting a lot of energy into this student, which I found interesting.
Well, how I wondered several times in this movie how much time he's spending principaling.
Yeah, he's spending a lot of time.
Well, not just with this kid and their daily history lessons,
but working with the police like task force.
Yes,
against this white gang.
Because ostensibly he's with the police before school starts at the end of this film.
I mean, that could have been one day out of the month. I don't know, but the way it's presented is like, oh, seems like you could be doing other things at this school. Okay, so Derek and Danny's dad. There's a pretty, I mean, so much of this is disturbing, but.
Oh, William Russ from Boy Meets World.
The dad is a firefighter who died while like trying to put out a fire in Compton, and apparently like a black person in the area shot him. But what was most disturbing is Derek and his mom are being interviewed on the news, and the way he starts talking about things was like, ugh. I mean, I guess the screenplay does a good job of showing like, trying to show like where his anger came from and how that trumped his, good sense.
His logic.
Yeah.
But then we get a scene at the end where there's a conversation with William Russ over the book Native Son.
That was really frustrating.
And you see where the seeds are planted.
Because basically the dad is like, the dad goes into this rant about affirmative action. And then he's talking about, he says like, you got to trade in good books for black books. But then it's like, we also are told before that the dad doesn't even read.
You don't read
classic literature. So it's like, how do you know that this isn't good literature? But then, I think that's also very powerful. And overall, the movie made me feel like, I think about Patrice O'Neal talking about this new racism. And in the movie, the principal alludes to it. But like, if I think about today, it's like, well, you don't have people out here wearing, white hoods, and they don't necessarily have the tattoos, but their actions and their rhetoric feel very similar. They're just not using the N-word.
No.
So it could be your neighbor who smiles in your face, but it's like, wow, when you get to the voting booth or where you put your money, says something very different.
Or what they think about critical race theory.
Right. So, it feels, which I think you were talking about the score and how the person in charge of the score didn't want to include.
Anne Dudley, who won an Oscar for The Full Monty, but she also did the score for The Crying Game and Elle.
But her decision to not use hip hop in the film and instead use like a boys' choir
and orchestra. Yeah.
Orchestra. I thought, maybe at the time she didn't know this, but I feel like it makes it feel even more timely, because if they would have put hip hop, it probably would have been like some gangster rap, which would have felt dated by today's standards. But watching it yesterday, it was almost like, God, if you take out the derogatory words, I feel like what several of these characters are saying,
I see on Fox News.
You still see people talking about on TikTok and on the news. So that was very unsettling.
This is the 25-year reunion or anniversary reunion of this film. But in curious watching it now, living in LA, how Venice has been gentrified since this film as well. But I think we also should talk about Tony Kaye, who this is much like David Fincher has distanced himself from Alien 3, like Tony Kaye and all of the weird shit going on in the background, and how literally the cut of this film that we do know and see is from Edward Norton. But it was his debut, and his kind of reaction and the antics he pulled kind of hobbled his career, because he did film 2 other projects during the 2000s that have never been seen by anybody. Lobby Lobster in Blackwater Transit, there is an abortion documentary called Lake of Fire that's worth a watch. And it wouldn't be till 2011 where we actually had another narrative feature release, which was Detachment with Adrian Brody, which I remember thinking is in a similar vein in some ways to this, but he has a new film in post-production called The Trainer.
There's a really upsetting scene where the white gang is playing basketball and there's like a group of black guys playing, and they basically say, the white guys, Derek presents this idea of like, we'll play, like the whites will play against the blacks, and if the whites win, the blacks can no longer occupy this court. And the white, like the DOCs win. And like the way they're celebrating with the triumphant music
is so gross.
That was really upsetting.
But also those were the men that that were breaking into his car, were part of that basketball team.
Oh, I hated the character of Seth.
Ethan Suplee.
He did a good job of being just like, ugh.
Disgusting.
When he barges into their apartment when Derek gets out of jail, and he's just being so rude and gross, which is just so funny because their rhetoric is about like how uncivilized immigrants are and N-words are. And it's like, you are disgusting. You are literally disgusting.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They don't have mirrors. Oh, and ironically, he's carrying a video recorder, which I was thinking, like, if someone recorded you acting this way and forced you to watch it, would you see what a hypocrite you are?
I don't think they would see. I think that's part of the problem.
No, they wouldn't. But
I find their surname interesting, Vinyard, Derek and Daniel Vinyard, because a vineyard is a plantation of grapevines, which are, of course, the grapes are used for harvest for wine. So it's like they literally are these things waiting on the vine, waiting to be harvested by something.
Derek and Danny, their family, we're supposed to think they're like having financial hardships. Mm-hmm. So I found it interesting that they have like a personal computer in their apartment.
In 1997, yeah.
Another really upsetting scene is when the DOCs attack this Korean-owned grocery store.
Yeah, that's a hard to watch too.
And just all their rhetoric, again, sounds very familiar to things we hear today. Yeah.
And you see basketball to a head, and then they demean the hell out of that cashier, which is really gross.
Yeah.
Tony Kaye, which is weird because that scene where they're pouring the milk on her, which is also mirrored later with Edward Norton in the shower, and there's some beautiful cinematography.
There is, moments.
But Tony Kaye was also the cinematographer.
Getting back to the dining room scene where Elliot Gould is, their argument starts because they're talking about Rodney King, and Derek trying to defend the cops, and Elliot Gould trying to say that it was excessive force. Like, it doesn't matter what he did, like whatever he did didn't warrant the ass whooping he got. And Derek is just like even Furlong Bulk, like her facial expressions and the way she looks like she's like a rabid animal was very scary to me. This to me is more of like a horror film.
Oh yeah,
actually.
The way Furlong Bulk looks, especially when she turns on Derek in the end at the party, there's a chapter titled "The Euphoria of Hate" in Isabel Wilkerson's cast, which that's what she's experiencing. She's euphoric.
People always ask me like, well, what's my favorite horror film? And I feel like I should just start saying American History X.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. Derek, when he decides to go back to see Stacy Keach at that party and he wants to tell him he's out, and that, I thought none of that made sense. Why are you just putting yourself in a situation where now people are going to be mad at you? Then Furlong Bulk's character, I don't know why he was trying to convince her raggedy ass to come with him.
Well, they had a very sexual relationship. I don't,
Well, I feel like
he thought there was something maybe worth saving in there.
He's good looking enough that he could have found somebody else to do whatever she was doing. I don't know why he was trying to convince that little rat to, And I was very frustrated by him in that moment.
Same. And I really like Furlong Bulk, but it's like watching Jenna Malone and Antebellum. It's like, it's so hard watching this woman I like be this.
She did a good job.
She did a good job, but it's like, ugh.
I wrote down, this will be the one F word I use, but I wrote down, when Derek's in prison with the other white supremacists, and he's not happy with how they are running their organization, and they're getting annoyed with him. And I said, you know, it's bad when the skinheads in prison tell you to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we don't. You need to quit this preaching.
Like, oh, you need to calm down. Again, the moments with Edward Norton and Guy Torrey, I thought were really nice, and I would have liked more of their conversations because really they bond over basketball. Well, the first few times we see them, it's just Guy talking to Ed while they're folding sheets because their job is in the laundry room, and Derek refuses to talk to him. I thought those are pretty powerful. Like he's just glaring at him, and then finally they're talking about, I think, the Lakers and the Celtics, and Derek starts laughing. Yeah, I mean, sort of the one moment of brevity, but I thought it was I just really wanted more of those two together.
Yeah, well, I think after watching such degradation, you cling to kind of those moments.
Sure. The rape scene in the shower was pretty like, oh God. That's all I have to say. I mean, a really good line that the principal says to Derek is, has anything you've done made your life better?
That's probably his best line.
And that's, I think, what Derek held on to, because we hear him say something to that effect to his brother. But yeah, I thought that was pretty powerful. But, you know, the logic in that is a little flawed, because I feel like there are a lot of people who...
Well, because the opposite can be true for you if you're fighting the good fight as well. But...
Well, no, what I was going to say is there are a lot of people who grow up in these toxic environments where they're made to have these very sort of like skewed views on the world they live in, but then they come from money, right? There's generational wealth. You have like this supreme life, and then you're being fed all this stuff that makes you think that you're superior. Then you would think that, like, if your dad is this racist ass Southern lawyer who's, you know, wrongly imprisoned, you know, generations of Black men and has fed you all this rhetoric, but then you have this amazing life and all this privilege, then you would think like, yeah, this makes sense. So I think that's scary, you know. For these people, that line makes sense, because it's like, well, clearly y'all are not winning and life is harder for you because you believe this. But
I don't know that Edward Furlong dying in the end too seems like it's overkill almost.
Well, what it made me think is, yeah, I mean, I was shocked when it happened. And then the immediate thing I thought is, oh no, how is Derek going to react to this? Like, he's come so far. Is this going to set him back? I want to believe that he is very smart and he knows that what happened to his brother is part and parcel to like this nonsense they were on. And so really we just need to like, there's a bigger issue at hand that we need to rectify, which caused this singular thing.
Well, it's also, you know, in a kind of a Greek tragedy kind of way, it's like, this is the sacrifice, your brother, for these lives you took, is kind of how I'm seeing that. But, you know, at the same time, one of the best scenes I think is that dinner scene, which is really violent and reminded me of, it's very, you know, visiting for the holidays and how things can evolve with family. But, you know, he's so violent with his mother and sister. And after he comes out of prison, I wish I'd seen a little more trepidation on their ends. Because, you know, because like Davina, she hasn't seen him.
Yeah, the last time she saw him, that was the day he physically assaulted her. And then when he comes home from prison, it's just like, hey.
Well, he's very loving and caring towards them. And when Furlong comes home from school and he sees them kind of like, because there's an even younger sister too, and they're all clutching on Edward Norton and crying. And it's like, so they might have, we just maybe didn't see that, but.
Sure. My only other note is, I know when it comes to flashbacks and like younger people, it can be difficult because like you can't cast someone different to play a 13-year-old versus a 17-year-old. But I did think, particularly for Edward Norton, in the flashbacks where he's still in high school, he looked crazy as hell.
Thankfully, there's not a lot of them, but
no,
sure.
The scene was powerful, but he looked crazy with that wig and like trying to look like a teenager. But what are they supposed to do? They can't cast someone else. But yeah, I think that'd be a challenge in any film to try to do that. But
Mm-hmm.
So Edward Norton had to gain 30 pounds of muscle for this role.
Yeah, because they wanted Joaquin Phoenix, and I think when Norton, I guess, was really into the role and took a huge price cut to play it, they thought he wasn't big enough.
Which is interesting. I wonder why they wanted him to look like that.
I think they wanted someone to look like a leader.
Oh, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like someone people would like a role like worship.
Mm-hmm. Because he's basically the workhorse. He's the extension of Stacy Keach's rhetoric.
I saw that Edward Norton turned down Saving Private Ryan to do this movie.
I think that's fine.
Oh, I don't remember that.
1998 at the Oscars. That's when we have the Weinsteins manhandling everything and Shakespeare in Love winning best. If looking at the best actress category that year, Gwyneth Paltrow winning over Fernanda Montenegro for Central Station that's appalling. that happened, but whatever.
Okay, I'll go through the comments. Have you seen Romper Stomper?
Yeah, we own it. But yeah, that's 1992. Russell Crowe is a skinhead. I haven't watched that in years and years and years.
Someone said they only have seen about 3% of the movies we talk about. Are we watching that obscure of movies?
I mean, I don't.
Or you just don't watch movies?
There are many, many more obscure things that I don't even approach him about.
Have you seen Detachment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in 2011. I remember having to drive to the Santa Monica 4 theater to see that specifically.
Someone finally made it to a live and a movie they've actually watched.
Oh, and what's interesting about Romper Stomper is Russell Crowe shortly after that played a gay character in The Sum of Us. Do you remember that movie? Like 94-ish?
No.
Scent of a Woman. It's been years since I watched that, but I think the consensus is that Pacino is screaming a lot.
Was Stacy Keach in Boogie Nights?
Oh
no, that's Burt Reynolds.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember Stacy Keach.
He was in Fat City in the 9th Configuration.
Yes, Fat City is great, even though Susan Tyrrell was technically sexually assaulted on that film, Oscar-nominated role. But Fat City's great. You like Road Games with him and Jamie Lee Curtis?
Oh, where he's in that big rig. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a good movie.
A friend of mine recommended reading his memoirs, which I've wanted to for a long time. I haven't yet, but 9th Configuration is by William Peter Blatty, who wrote The Exorcist. It's actually it's a continuation of that.
Have we reviewed Boogie Nights? No.
God, I would love to rewatch that. I haven't watched it since 97.
You can make it a podcast.
I could. Mm-hmm.
Life is Beautiful was the first movie I watched in my movie appreciation course in college. I would love to hear more about a movie appreciation course.
I would too. Well, and that's what you started with. I don't like Life is Beautiful. I don't like it.
Have we seen Edward Furlong nowadays? I don't know what he looks like now. I can imagine.
He looks terrible. About a decade ago, we were somewhere in Hollywood and somebody told me I looked like Edward Furlong. And then you were like, who's that? And recent pictures of him came up then. And but that's what I look like. I feel like Janine Garofalo. Kathy Bates. I look like Kathy Bates. Okay.
Well, I wanted to rewatch this, but it's too hard. Yeah, I mean, it was hard to sit through.
It's, in my mind, the curb stomping part happens in the opening. So I was dreading the opening, and they actually, having rewatched it now, they delay us seeing that. And because I remember I was telling you, I'm like, okay, this scene's really hard to watch. And you're like, what?
Well, yeah, because it's like, well, we don't see it, but then you do see it from a distance, but it's like, it's very upsetting.
Yeah.
Edward Furlong plays the younger brother of a violent man in Little Odessa.
Oh, James Gray's debut. Yeah, that's Vanessa Redgrave. That's a good movie.
I think there's also a message in there about how parents' words can influence children with more impact than intended. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we were just talking about in the grocery store before this about when your parents say some racist ass shit, like that sticks with you. Like there are things that I heard my grandparents say that I'm like, oh, maybe you're not good people.
Yeah. Oh, someone loved Master Gardener.
I loved Master Gardener. Sigourney is great in that.
Okay.
It's not supposed to be a pretty film with that's all its loose ends are tied up. And if you think about it, I think that how it's handling this racist person in that is less after school special than what we're getting in American History X, which doesn't make the point of American History X that is supposed to get across to the mainstream, I think, is apparent and important. But Master Gardener, I think, is doing something else.
Well, we made a video about it, so my opinions in that video.
You feel like as strong as Cameron Bailey, who wouldn't program it at TIFF last year because he couldn't show a film that so lightly dealt with racism, he said.
I don't. I mean, I don't.
I don't think it lightly. I think it sidesteps it because it's a genre exercise. But
I didn't care for it because I felt like it feels like the person who made it
is an old white man.
Is an old white man who's like, it just feels dated and unrealistic to me.
Sure.
So that's why I don't think the subject matter is like unwatchable. I just think that it's an odd. Yeah. I don't think that person told that story very well, or he needed to set it like back in the 60s or something. But to make a modern story and the way the young black lady was written, I just thought that, yeah. Anyway, what is the best film in your opinion that deals with race? Oh, I would have to think long and hard.
I feel like there are so many intersections, and if we're talking about Black women as well, that you need a compendium. You need to have a course of films that deal with race, because you also have to think the history of film is heavily compromised with white people telling Black stories, and I think you need to see the progression of certain elements across periods.
That quick fix montage of Ed Norton shaking his head while reading the books in jail, like he just woke up one day and understood racism is bad.
Yeah.
That's.
I also want to.
I know it's not meant to be that way, but that's how it feels, and I didn't like that.
You know what I thought would have been helpful is like, could we see the book titles that you're reading, and maybe everybody that's watching this could watch these too. Larry Clark was supposed to direct this. I did not know that. I'm glad. I think I'm probably glad that didn't happen, but he would have been fine. But I think he would have taken a different approach, I'd imagine.
Isn't William Russ the neighbor writer in Cruising?
Yes. God, I watched something else recently with him as a young man whose leg is broken the whole time. Is it the one with Mary Steenburgen and Roddy McDowell? Is it Dead of Winter? It might be.
Isn't that the issue with cancel culture? People are so afraid of being canceled. You never really find out what their true beliefs are. Harder to spot. I mean,
yeah, everything is cloaked in euphemism, but you can usually read between the lines if you're listening.
This cat food is present in every. Yeah, I mean, I remember thinking as a kid, like, well, even today, it's like I would rather know how people really feel about things than to smile in my face and then. Because then I think it's disarming, right? Like we all think everything's fine. It's like, then major political things happen, legislation gets passed, and everyone's like, how did this happen? It's like, well, I don't think much has changed. It's just that people have changed the way they talk about things and how they present their feelings. But if you get people if you get me in private talking about some things, I sound very different than what I say. I mean, my values are the same, but you know what I mean? It's like, I know that people act real different in private where it matters, right? Than what they say on TV or how they present themselves on social media.
Well, going back to that bit by Patrice O'Neill, when he's like, God, I know this guy's racist. I just can't.
Well, because in that comedy bit you're referring to, this comedian is in the audience or talking to the audience, and he says, oh, is anyone here racist? And of course, the audience goes quiet. And he's like, well, that can't be right because we all acknowledge racism exists, but then no one's racist. Like,
well, that's the thing we are all conditioned from birth about some kind of hierarchy. And that shit doesn't go away just by reading some books or getting to know some new people. Like that is you're deconstructing that throughout your life, depending upon a variety of elements. about where you came from.
Like Avenue Q says, everyone's a little bit racist. I think nowadays
came from.
Avenue Q says everyone's a little bit racist. I think nowadays it's like, yeah, racism can be very subtle. And I think people feel like, well, the biggest red flag for me is when someone goes, I'm not racist. And it's like, oh, I think you are, because even like I was watching Ramona Singer from the Real Housewives of New York. She did an interview a few days ago. And the interviewer is Black, and he was asking her, because if you don't know, there was drama with her and one of the Black housewives on the show. And people were questioning whether or not she was being treated unfairly, and ultimately Bravo split up the show, kind of. Anyway, it's a mess. But hearing Ramona Singer talk about it, it's just like, yeah, the problem is you don't think you're racist because you're not saying these overt things, but the fact that you've put zero work into trying to understand this person's position. And I'm not defending Ebony. I think she got on the show to be a character and create drama. But also she wanted to talk about issues of race, and she wanted to talk about politics. And I also understand the other housewives saying this is supposed to be a frivolous show about rich women drinking and cat fighting. Why are you bringing politics into it? But the point of me bringing that up is I feel like racism exists in very subtle ways. And because we're all so disarmed, not all of us, but many of us are disarmed because people aren't using the N-word, and people aren't burning crosses in front of buildings or attacking Korean store owners.
Or hanging Black people from trees.
Right, that like everything's so much better. And I don't see it. I think that it's probably as bad. It's just different.
It's mutated.
It's just different. Mm-hmm. I went on a rant, but this movie, y'all picked this movie. I don't know. I mean, Malcolm X would have probably had me hot too. So.
Yeah. I mean, well,
that's why I wanted to watch The Godfather 2.
Godfather 2 is pretty anxiety. It's pretty good. But no, we'll do probably a podcast eventually on Malcolm X. But
oh God, I don't know what I'm.
Oh, Tony Kaye. So yeah, Tony Kaye didn't like Edward Norton's performance, and then of course they nearly got into fisticuffs, I think, because this New Line Cinema had them edit it together. Tony Kaye's original cut, I know, was like 95 minutes, and this is much. I think Norton added an extra 18 minutes. I think Tony Kaye, for a directorial debut, because he made some infamous comment about how, I know this is my first film, but I deserve the same anonymity as Stanley Kubrick. It's like, well, this industry doesn't allow that, especially for newcomers. So I think, and Edward Norton, I think, was already an Oscar nominee by this time for Primal Fear. So he had some clout.
Have you seen the 2017 film Shot Caller?
Yes, with Nikolai Coster-Waldau. That's actually one of his better films.
Yeah, Ed Norton dated Courtney Love and Salma Hayek. I remember Salma Hayek. I don't remember Courtney.
He was dating Courtney Love during the making of American History X, which is, God, 98. This was right before she did Man on the Moon with Jim Carrey.
I don't know if you mentioned it last week, but the writer of The French Connection also co-wrote an excellent movie called Report to the Commissioner.
I didn't mention that, but Report to the Commissioner is an excellent film. I actually reviewed that on Blu-ray. I think the director's name is, I'm going to mess this up. It's like Milton Katselas or something, who had a really interesting directorial career in the 70s. Yeah, but Report to the Commissioner deals with racism in really interesting ways. He did this movie with Liv Ullmann called 40 Carats that I've always wanted to watch and never seen. And I want to say he did a movie with, who was that evangelist? Marjo. He did a movie with Marjo Gortner, I think, as well.
Ethan Suplee went to the store and forgot the movie tattoos were still on him, and he almost got into a fight. Yeah,
I did hear about that.
I didn't know that.
Which reminds me of a story from Femme, which was a film I tried to get you to watch that's on Berlin this year. That's excellent. That's about homophobia and racism. And George McKay also forgot the tattoos after filming, and people were frightened.
Is that true that the Rodney King incident was captured on camera by people working on Terminator 2 in the opening bar scene?
I don't know.
Oh, I'd have to look that up.
I didn't know that. The opening bar scene where he's naked, where Schwarzenegger's naked.
Someone loves our reviews. Thank you.
Oh, and Terminator 2 got Eddie Furlong.
Oh,
Growing up, my dad did not like Eddie. My dad sold us as like Eddie Furlong ruined Terminator 2. My dad did not like it.
I'm gonna text him a picture of Eddie Furlong. uh,
To me, looking back on that, I think I have more of a problem with Linda Hamilton's performance, but
I have to use the bathroom.
I think.
Do you want to talk about something?
Well, you just lost your place. So I
did.
know.
Oh, geez. Okay, I went really far. Here, can you do that? You want to talk about Tim Roth?
Not really.
Oh,
no. Something. I don't know. I've been rewatching a bunch of Woody Allen movies in anticipation of his new one, and I have not. Everyone says I Love You is a musical, and I remember Julia Roberts, but I don't remember Edward Norton. Yeah, Fairuza Balk does definitely have crazy eyes. The Craft is probably my favorite with her, but she also had The Island of Dr. Moreau in that. And if you haven't seen her in Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, she has a little minor role in that. John Singleton's Higher Learning, I think, is definitely a much more, dare I say, more sophisticated film, but also arrived before American History X. I think everybody gives a really good performance in Higher Learning, except for Christy Swanson, who, looking back, I wish had been recast with someone else. But Tim Roth and Drew Barrymore, and since I just haven't rewatched Everyone Says I Love You, Tim Roth, for whatever reason, I always go to that rape scene in Rob Roy with Jessica Lange, which is a really terrible scene. But yeah, Tim Roth is pretty good, but he's been in so much, especially in the 90s, like Pulp Fiction. I also think of him as not being British sometimes. I think he just had a kid that died tragically as well. Edward Norton, lately he was in The Glass Onion.
Just over here gossiping.
Knives Out. Yeah.
I think he had a kid who died.
He did. And he also had a kid that was in, I don't know if it's the same one, that was in that Megan Fox movie that's no good. But yeah, Edward Norton was in Glass Onion, which I didn't like. And he was in Asteroid City. I've never seen Keeping the Faith. Jenna Elfman.
Who's that?
From Dharma and Greg.
Oh, she was in a movie I know?
She was in Keeping the Faith, I'm pretty sure, with Edward Norton, and I want to say Ben Stiller.
Have I seen Primal Fear?
Yes. We rented that, the first Blu-ray player we ever got in 2010. That was the first movie we watched on it. With Richard Gere.
Your memory. I don't even remember the Blu-ray player.
We were living in Minneapolis, got a Blu-ray player. And then
From Best Buy?
Yes.
In Richfield?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I remember that.
And the first Blu-ray you ever purchased me, ironically, was Charles Chaplin's Modern Times.
I bought you that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the person who doesn't watch. I just don't watch movies. I can't sit through them, which is why I watch y'all, because it makes me sound like I know a lot of movies. You could watch movies on double speed. I used to do that. Before I met Nick, I watched all of my movies on double speed.
I was horrified to hear that. That's horrifying to me. No. My God. Or then he'd be like, he'd get frustrated with, okay, so my mother scarred me as a child because I would get excited about movies and ruin the endings for people. And so now when Joseph would be like, well, how does it end? And I would pussyfoot around that. And he'd always be like, I'm just going to read Wikipedia. But my sister ruined Sixth Sense for me as a kid, and I'll never forget it.
I'm gonna text her that GIF of I see dead people. Oh, I froze again. Okay.
Yeah, we need to watch Jean Dielman.
Oh yeah, a very powerful line in this movie is when Beverly D'Angelo says, "I am ashamed that you came out of my body."
God, Beverly D'Angelo, I feel like she does not get the credit she deserves because people just think of her from those National Lampoon movies. But
she's like the Little Richard of Hollywood, or
She had twins with Al Pacino at a very late stage.
She did?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I knew that.
Yeah.
Is she in The Godfather?
No.
Oh,
Diane
are Al
Keaton.
Pacino and her in a movie together?
I'd have to look. Maybe somewhere along the line. She's in The Good House with Sigourney Weaver.
Where she's the real estate agent?
Mhm. And she's in that movie where David Harbour plays Santa recently.
Oh, the horror action movie.
Holy Night, good, whatever that is.
Have you seen Ham on Rye?
No.
What's the theme for this week? Like this video? Best,
Oh, you mean next week?
or do you mean next week?
I was going to suggest it's Keke Palmer's birthday next week.
Keke Palmer movies?
Mm-hmm.
Has she done enough movies to vote on?
Yeah, I wrote down 5 that I'd be
What are they?
to watch. Pimp, Imperial Dreams, The Long Shots, Aquila and the Bee, and Medea's Family Reunion.
I feel like people are going to vote for Medea.
That's fine. That's one. That's
You want to watch?
It's the only Medea film I haven't seen, and Lynn Whitfield's in it. So
okay.
and Blair Underwood.
It'll be Keke Palmer week.
Although I'm going to vote for Pimp, I already know, but yeah, obviously Nope's not going to be on there, or something else that's going to trump everything. But
who's on the Mount Rushmore of bad hair in movies? Oh God, I'd have to think about that.
This man's memory.
I mean, for sure, Courtney Cox in that Scream movie is like a nightmare.
Scream 3. Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I don't think, when I think about, I always think about the movie, is it Fellini with the artichoke? And she says bye like this.
Lestrada.
What's that actress's name?
Oh, she was married to him.
But her
Julieta.
Her little hairdo looks like an artichoke.
Well, that's why she was aptly named.
Oh, who else do I hate? Oh, I'd have to think about it.
She's really good in Knights of Cabiria as well.
I'd have to think about it.
Yeah.
Hell no, Nick. You don't look like Edward Furlong. What the hell?
Thank you, Jesus.
He's really mad about that.
Julieta Messina. Yeah, because even in the 90s, I mean, with his shaved head, I guess, in this movie, this was the same year as Pecker as well. The John Waters.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
I watched that recently. It's okay.
Happy to see us live. Love our reviews. Thank you. Thank you, BMCK. Hello, Shirley. Nick, you're very handsome. You look nothing like Furlong.
Thank you. But now I'm not out here trying to call somebody, ugly, but I do not want to be compared to him.
I want to thank Nick because whenever I realize a movie is an adaptation of a novel, I feel obligated to read it.
It's interesting because I always used to think that if I'm going to watch the film, I won't read the book. But I found, sometimes the film version is better, or I like the choices it's made better. I think Stephen King's The Shining is the best example of that. But
or The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart.
Recently, The Lost Flowers of which some lady on Australian TV had the nerve to call that iconic. Things can't just be iconic.
Oh, here we go.
Because they happened. Things aren't just gourmet because somebody slopped some food on a plate. Gourmet mayo. Things can't be gourmet or iconic just because.
You're mad about gourmet mayo?
You can't just, it's this like words mean things.
They do. And
they lose meaning when we lose them and use them incorrectly.
What are your thoughts on Harmony Korine's new film?
I'm about to see it, Agro something, in Venice. I'm curious.
The picture on the range hood is Janet Jackson with Sigourney Weaver at a charity event.
Mm-hmm.
Do the Right Thing. Oh, Do the Right Thing is a great film on race.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's more than great. I gave it 5 out of 5.
Yeah, that's an excellent film.
Did you see the director of The Love Witch was on Twitter hating the Bottoms movie tagline? What is the Bottoms movie tagline?
I don't remember. Something about fighting, isn't it? I did like Bottoms. The Love Witch. I'm forgetting that lady's name. But you know what? I remember when that came out, I had a screener and I never finished it. It has an interesting look to it, but I didn't like The Love Witch. The first half of it at least, and it's really rare. That's I can probably count on one hand really the films that I've done that to. But
Struggle Reviews is in the chat. She makes really good, funny review videos, which I think she charges for. So maybe I do need to start charging for. People have, after that last time we talked about it, people message offering money for reviews, but I don't know.
Well, you need to create a little spreadsheet for yourself and keep track of those people.
Well, but then the problem is if we get like several many, then we would be spending a lot of time making reviews of like random movies.
School Days. I think School Days is Spike Lee's debut, unless I'm incorrectly thinking, I'm mixing that up. Right, and that's where the you get the girls in school based on that. It's all about colorism.
The tagline on the poster for Bottoms says a movie about empowering women, the hot ones. I don't.
Well, it's if you've seen them.
I really like that.
If you see the film, then you'll realize that tagline's ironic.
Yeah. You have to watch the movie, I think, and then that doesn't feel as problematic. But
again, I think it's all about judging things ahead of time. That we need to get away from. And I think it's okay to have that reaction. Like, I don't like that. Like, I hated the marketing for Bros, but I reserved my negativity for the review after I watched it. But
The Green Room is a good movie about racism.
Jeremy Saulnier.
Higher Learning.
Yeah, while you were indisposed, I was talking about Higher Learning.
Oh.
But yeah, Higher Learning is a lot of fun in a way that is far ahead of its time from a Black filmmaker.
Yeah, Ramona needs, at the bare minimum, some PR training. But yeah, Bridget Fonda. Well, you know what? She said, I'm going to be comfortable. I'm not going to worry about my appearance. I'm just going to live my life. I think it's kind of sad because she looks like a normal person.
Yeah.
Like, but you know, it's hard when people know you as one thing and then you change. And But she looks happy.
She's still married to Danny Elfman.
She's married to Dan. Oh, so she's very rich.
She's fine. I mean, Peter Fonda was her daddy, and Jane Fonda's still around and kicking. Like, she's fine. But
if I came into a bunch of money, I'm moving very far away in an isolated area, and I'm probably going to gain like 300 pounds. And I'm just going to be fat and sassy by myself. I can see why she did that.
I have never seen Neo Ned. Go back up because I think you'd be interested in that. I've never seen that. I remember when that came out.
Jeremy Renner and Gabrielle Union. Oh, and she's Hitler reincarnated.
Which is very kind of like the opposite of Bubba Hotep, right? Where Ossie Davis is JFK reincarnated. Is that right?
Oh,
was that what he was?
Did I miss?
Yeah, or Bruce Campbell's Elvis.
Oh, yes. I'm afraid I missed something. Okay. Wait. Oh, I did. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Latrice. Great review.
I never said, I don't like most Medea films, but the other ladies in the first Boo do make me laugh.
Oh, I think I skipped a lot of things. Okay. Sorry. Well, here we are. How the heck do you remember your first Blu-ray rental? You remember a lot of random.
I do.
But you can't remember to rinse out the sink, but whatever.
I do. It gets there. Don't cast aspersions on my cleanliness online. Burnt Offerings. Yes, I have that. Karen Black, Oliver Reed. I collect Betty Davis films, or used to.
Do you think you'll one day convince me to watch Decalogue?
Excellent. Perfect.
Is it long?
It's, as the title suggests, it's 10 films.
Do you think you could convince me to watch Decalogue?
Yeah, because I think once you start, you would be into it. Krzysztof Kieslowski.
Well, we'll see.
Well, I own it. It's Criterion. We own it.
Nick is like, remember when you stubbed your toe 8 years ago at 3:42 p.m.? But you know who else has a really good memory? My sister.
She does. It's and they both act the same way. So it's interesting getting the two of them together.
Why? Also, she's a problem too.
Yeah, I mean, I am too. I mean, that's just in different ways.
Okay. Uh, Joseph has that Zoomer brain. Oh, Edward Norton is in Birdman.
I do like Birdman. Yeah.
A Death in Venice. Do I know that? Is that the movie with the kid, the most beautiful boy in the world?
Yep.
Oh,
Ooh, there you go. Got some pistons firing in there. Yes, and people were highly critical of Joseph not having seen A Death in Venice for that review. But yeah, and I've read the books and novella, Thomas Mann.
Oh, Joseph is a Gen Xer. We got other things to do. I know that's right. I have more important things to do than worry about what. Never mind. Are critics affected by the writer's strike?
No, because there's still stuff pumping out and being released. People going all these things.
Joseph said, "Here, honey, some Cinema 101 on Blu-ray."
Yeah, that is. I mean, Chaplin's. You can't really go wrong with Chaplin, though.
Someone said, before our reviews, I would watch the preview, then read the plot on Wikipedia. Oh, doing homework. Do we plan on reviewing more TV shows? Miniseries, maybe.
It depends. Timing has a lot to do with everything.
That's a lot. You know, the DSM podcast ladies, they just did a episode on the Steve Harvey show, which I really enjoyed, that show and the podcast. But I don't know if they rewatched all of the I mean, that's a lot. I couldn't. If I did that, I would make it like a 20 episode series. There's no way I could watch all of that at once to make like a 20-minute video. I like Kiki. I think Kiki Palmer is really funny.
I do too. And she has kind of an interesting filmography. But to be fair about My Sister with the Sixth Sense, she was 9.
She was a little girl. She
came home and was excited to say it.
Oh, we're going to be on a podcast soon for Deadline, I think.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And part of what we're going to talk about is the writer's strike. So I'll save my thoughts for that. Mm-hmm. I've seen Aquila and the Bee when I worked at that middle school. We played it. So that's how I know that movie.
I've actually never seen that.
I mean, the Medea film.
Oh, yeah.
That would be fun, I guess.
I was actually just looking at Tyler Perry, his filmography that I've seen on Letterboxd. He got 1 3.5 from me for Color Girls, and almost everything hovers at about the 1 or 0.5 star range.
Oh, there's a movie with Kiki and Corbin Bleu called Jump In,
which I have not seen. She also did a movie called Animal that I think is a horror film in 2014.
Someone saw Flawless with Philip Seymour Hoffman for the first time.
God, I haven't watched that since the year it came out. I think Joel Schumacher directed that. De Niro had a stroke. Yeah, the
last Fantastic Four movie had hair issues. I would need to look at that.
Is that the one that Josh Trank did?
Oh, Josh Hartnett's hair in The Faculty. Well, we did a live for the faculty. Yeah, we did, right? Mm-hmm. I think I commented on his hair.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you seen No Down Payment?
No.
We have seen The Haunting of Julia with Mia Farrow. We made a video about it, didn't we?
No, we brought it up on a podcast because I actually reread the book by Peter Straub, Julia, and it was recently released on Blu-ray from Scream Factory.
Thank you, Raina. I'm glad you enjoy our content, our foolishness. Barbara Stanwyck's hair in DB. What's DB? Barbara Stanwyck's hair in DB was compared to George Washington's wig.
Double Indemnity.
Oh, Now I got to look at a picture.
You've seen Double Indemnity. You liked it.
I know, but I don't remember her hair.
It's an ugly wig. Mm-hmm.
Eddie looks like a modern day Gollum. Oh. Joseph smiling from ear to ear. Who else do I hate? Okay.
Robin Tunney's wig. Robin Tunney's very wiggy in The Craft, but part of that is because I almost wonder because they did that special effect where she shakes her hair and becomes blonde in the one.
I made pancakes for breakfast today. Iconic.
Mm-hmm.
I need gourmet mayo to become a short on the channel. Please, Joseph. Well, the problem is I have to remember the timestamp. If people want me to make more shorts, you need to comment on the video the time. That's usually how I know, because I can't rewatch there's no time for me to rewatch, so I don't know.
Here's the thing. Sriracha is cheap. You cannot squirt it in mayo and mix it up and call it an aioli and call that shit gourmet. No. That's just not it.
I would love a podcast with Joseph or Nick just going on some rants. I feel like that we do that.
we do that. Sometimes to our detriment.
Agree with Nick, like all these crappy apartment complexes that slap luxury on their signs.
Yeah, no, like Madonna luxury sun apartments. No, because you have a pool that no one uses or cleans. No.
I wish you guys would review Affliction or Robert Duvall.
The Apostle.
The Apostle.
Those are both in the same.
Oh.
Affliction.
Have I seen The Apostle? No.
I've never seen The Apostle. Farrah Fawcett's.
What's Affliction?
Affliction is a really good Paul Schrader film for which what's his name, won an Oscar, and Nick Nolte. With the teeth. What's his name?
We're both very handsome.
Not Lee.
I feel pretty greasy this morning, but
you don't look greasy. Oh, I forgot Sissy Spacek's in Affliction.
Yeah, the marketing for Bros was cringe.
James Coburn. Jesus.
People keep saying do a Patreon, but watch me set up a Patreon and no one joins. It'll be like in school when no one picked me to be on their team. What's your favorite Steven Seagal movie? You know, Steven Seagal has an album where he's singing like...
It's a song called Strut in 2004, which I'm assuming is from a whole album. And he's using a Jamaican accent and talking about wanting the punani. And somebody had posted something on Instagram and I'm like, what is this? And it is horrifying. It's horrifying that somebody thought this needed to be made. I grew up in a household, my dad did not like Steven Seagal. Although I almost put on The Glimmer Man again recently.
He's in that?
Mm-hmm. Isn't that also with Keenan Ivory Wayans?
I would watch that.
Pam Grier is in a Steven Seagal movie that I've never seen, because every time I almost put it on to watch Pam, I'm like, oh, it's Steven Seagal. Is it hard to kill?
I don't know. The first DVD I bought was Jaws. Someone has a question. Who loved Grease 2 better than the first one?
I've never seen Grease 2.
I haven't either. I watched Grease for the first time when? Like a year ago?
When Olivia Newton-John died, I made you watch that.
But the second one has Michelle Pfeiffer, who I really like.
I do too. And we used to hang out with a group of gays that loved that movie.
Who liked that movie?
We'll talk about that off camera. Because I don't like those people.
Oh my goodness. When I was a hospice nurse, I'd come home and watch a horror movie before going to sleep just to numb myself. Well, I mean, we do what we have to do.
Yeah.
Most people want to be fat and sassy by myself. I mean, it's not like I'm like a skinny legend now, but you know, like worrying about... don't you feel like you have to worry about how you present all the time?
Well, especially being gay, yeah.
Well, I'm trying to be like a productive person in life and like be out and about. And so like I try to be, you know, socially appropriate and put together, but that shit takes energy. And
it does. And everybody, and if, you know, you stay in one place for a while, especially with the gays, they all like to comment about like, oh, you're actually aging okay. And it's like,
I would like to just not have to do anything. Like, I don't want to have to wax my nose and my ears or shave anything, or I mean, I don't want to be fat. Like, I don't want to not feel good.
Being fit.
So I'm being kind of funny. But what I mean is like not caring so much.
Being fit isn't really about how your body looks. It's about how you feel.
Yeah. My Zoomer brain. They meant. Well, I assumed it wasn't boomer, but they're clarifying Zoomer brain meant because I watch movies on XX speed. Um, do you have a top 5 period piece list? I feel like you'd have to think about that.
I'd have to think about that.
Could we do a review of 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days?
I think I reviewed that on the Criterion Blu-ray, but that's a very difficult film to watch.
I was waiting for someone to say, not gonna lie, Ed Norton looked real good coming out of prison. So I have had the biggest crush on Edward Norton forever, but I'd never seen this movie.
Mhm.
So I don't know what role I saw him in 25 years ago that made me think like I really like Ed Norton. He does look good in this movie, but
I think that this was the movie that made me think that he's not appealing.
oh, well, I mean,
Yes, his body looks nice, but he's terrifying.
he is terrifying.
Gerald's Game. You know, that film version is not bad with Carla Gugino.
We should get a dog.
No.
That wouldn't work.
We already had a dog. This fool brought the dog back.
Well, yeah. And then, or get a cat so she won't be lonely. She had a brother and she didn't like him. So, and I didn't either. So we got rid of him too.
I had to bring Denny Deginald to Minnesota to see who's happy with my sister. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Christina. Thanks for your hard work in providing endless entertainment.
Wait,
Thank
Billy Porter had to sell his house?
That's what he said.
He does, you know, prior to the strikes, he had his hands in a lot of pots. He's working a lot. So The Family That Prays.
I've seen that.
Yeah, with Kathy Bates and Alfre Woodard. I remember when we watched that movie, we watched that on DVD, and there were some extra features, and here's, you know, both these fabulous women talking about what drew them to The Family That Prays, and neither of them said Tyler Perry. They said, "Oh, I get to work with Alfre, and I get to work with Kathy."
We're the sexiest reviewers. Is that true? I look like I washed my face with a chicken bone.
You do not. You're glowing.
We ran out of time because we went this morning to prepare for the apocalypse.
Do you want to look ashy, or do you want to look like you're moisturized? I mean, come on.
We had to go to the store this morning because, you know, a tropical storm is hitting. So I had to make sure we had frozen pizza and we didn't get dessert. Oh, we have cookies though. You made cookies.
I did. Yes, you can tell we're in LA when there are alarms about there might be rain and might be a lot of rain.
I woke up this morning like we have to go to the store. And then we went and had coffee. I'm getting tired of this overpriced coffee. It was good though. But my little cup, where is my cup? Oh, I probably threw it away.
I threw it away.
Like $7 for a little bitty.
Yeah, you did respond well to that Sigourney scene in The Good House where she refuses to buy the expensive coffee.
Well, ground coffee, fine. But like, I don't know, some of these coffee shops, it's like, the one we went to this morning, I wanted to visit because we lived by there and for years drove by and never stopped. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. And then when people criticize me for going to Starbucks, it's like, well, Starbucks is kind of cheap compared to these mom and pop places. Yeah, again, if people want me to make more shorts, just timestamp something so I know, and then I'll make it. Because I think they're funny too. And more of Nick would be good.
More of me what?
In the shorts. Because most of them are me.
Well, you create them.
Oh, I look very well moisturized.
See, it's better to look moisturized than dry.
Since we're LA based, are we getting ready for? Oh yeah, I just talked about it. Yeah. We should be fine though, because usually when there's a power outage, we don't. Well, let me knock on wood. I think because it's newer construction, I think maybe the wiring and because there'll often be power outages around us, but we're fine. We should be fine.
Oh, we'll be fine. We're going to live.
I'm going to pull in the patio stuff, and I'm not planning on doing anything tomorrow. So,
your first purchase from your first DVDs were Candyman and Scream in '99. That's funny. '99. My first DVD was that year Well, probably in 2000 because Galaxy Quest was my very first DVD.
Do I hear that I remind people that my brain is, we probably need to end soon. Joseph, you remind me of Omari Hardwick. Do you hear that a lot? No.
You do.
I do not. I wish I looked like Omari Hardwick.
After we watched For Colored Girls back in 2010, I said, "Oh, you kind of look like him," and you got so mad that I said that. But you've been told that before. I've met Omari twice. I interviewed him along with.
And when you met him, did he remind you of me? No.
I've learned that I can't make that comparison anymore. He was very friendly with David Oyelowo and Emma Yahtzee Cornialdi and Ava DuVernay from Middle of Nowhere. And then he ended up at a press screening of a documentary I was at called Bully from 2012-ish.
I lost my spot. Have we seen the Baby, a 1973 psychological thriller?
Oh, I've seen The Baby many times.
Is that with the adult man who's a baby?
Yes.
Oh, we watched that like a month with your sister.
I made my mother and sister watch. That's a film that I make people watch when they come over. Ted Post. Great.
Yeah, I've seen it more than once.
I have seen The Hand. That's Oliver Stone directed that with Michael Caine. It's...
Oh my gosh. Have a great weekend, everyone. I can't wait for your podcast tomorrow. Did you go to any new restaurants? I love hearing you drag them. We did go to a new restaurant last night. We can talk, but it was good, so there won't be any dragging this time.
No.
Although the parking situation I could talk about.
God, Wesley Snipes would have been great casting as James Baldwin.
Oh, here we go. Did you guys ever rent from Cinema Revolution in Minneapolis?
Yeah. Wow, yeah.
Look at him.
I used to love cinema. They were at two different locations for a while. The guy that owned that directed a movie, Je ne sais quoi, which I remember seeing at some theater back in 2008. He would have movie discussion nights or days, and I and a coworker of mine would every week there'd be a theme. It'd be like queer film, and we'd watch a movie and then show up in this little straggling amount of people that would sit in the store and talk about movies. And they asked me to lead the discussion on Those Who Love Me Can Take the Train. I loved Cinema Revolution. I actually owned some DVDs. When they went out of business, I bought a bunch.
Joseph has a wonderful sense of humor. He's hilarious.
He is.
Oh, you can see that I'm funny.
Why do you think I've been here 15 years? I know you're funny.
Well, there are all these reasons you've been here so long.
Likewise, I'm sure.
I would never know.
Oh, God.
Okay. Well, people have to pee. I have to pee. When the power goes out, light a lot of candles.
Joseph does have a thing for candles. We have lots of them.
I do like candles a lot. Going to Minneapolis. Do you have any recommendations for food and obscure points of interest?
Minneapolis has a lot of really good bookstores. So I did like especially used ones that I recommend. Almost any of them are pretty good. They have a lot of good breweries. There are a lot of good restaurants. I have fond memories of Brasa. My sister just took me to a bunch of places that were pretty damn good, but I don't remember the title. I have to think.
I would love some asada fries. I often have a hankering for asada fries. It's like out of the blue. We're so cute and knowledgeable about a lot of things. Thank you. Oh yeah, you could see a Twins game. That new it's very impressive, the stadium or whatever you call it.
Man.
Okay, well, so our theme for next week is Keke Palmer.
Oh, that's been decided?
Yeah, I said it when you said it.
That's it. Okay. Very Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man of you.
I don't cook. Nick cooks.
This is true.
A cooking show.
No.
He'd be funny because you don't take a lot of care in your.
The food is good. What do I not take care in?
Ta-ta for now, everyone.
Lies.